Hey, I'm Alex back with more Game Con. Today I'm reviewing Floe from Pika Games. Floe is designed by Henry Audubon, Yoma, and Johnny Pat Canton, illustrated by Andrew Bosley, and is from Pika Games, an offshoot company from Fantasia Games. This is an adventure Euro game. That's kind of what it's bringing to the table here. A bit of an adventure, a bit of a Euro, while you wander around, explore, fight things, collect things, upgrade your tableau, all of that stuff, while trying to gain as many points as possible, or more specifically, have as many points as possible when endgame is triggered. Everything you see here is a prototype, rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and coming here from Pika Games, again, offshoot from Fantasia Games, I expect everything which already looks great to look even better in the final version of the game. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into how this game plays, my thoughts, opinions, review, all of that stuff, but starting off with how it plays. At its core, there's a few things. I don't even know how to start with this game. There's a lot of different things going on here. There's a little bit of worker placement, a little bit of adventure, a little bit of tableau building, a little bit of upgrading, a little bit of everything going on. But let's, I guess, dial it back a bit. The goal of the game is to get points. You're going to be tracking your points up here on this chart, trying to get to 6 points, which will trigger endgame. And I should note before we dive into this further, that I'm playing specifically a reviewer copy of the game, as specifically brought to you at a certain point in time in terms of unlocks. The way the game is officially structured is you'll be introduced to things one at a time, and then have those things, well, slowly add up to the full game that I'm playing right now. I shouldn't even say full game, the partial game I'm playing right now. Because there's going to be more unlocks, there's going to be more things that I haven't seen. I'm seeing effectively one narrow slice of this game, and that's what I'm going to be talking about, commenting, and all of that. But with that said, with that kind of, so you have a bit of an understanding of where your final game might differ a little bit from this. That said, where this one is right now at its current point in time is you are going to be diving into a bit of a worker placement and a bit of an adventure game. On your turn, you take one of two actions. You either go to the village, and the village is going to be up here, in which case you can engage in a bit of a worker placement and a bit of a Mancala mechanisms. You're going to have your people who go onto the board, go into one of the 5 main spots, or the healer over there who can heal and gain some warmth back, and then trigger the various villagers to wander around the board rondel style, which will give you more warmth back. So you're playing a bit of a rondel game, but also going to one of the 5 main locations. Those 5 main spots generally have the same idea for at least, well, 4 of them, which is where you're going to look at these tracks over here, these resource tracks. There's 5 resource tracks, there's your bubbles in the middle, and then the 4 other tracks. And if you have a completely full resource track, which means this is at the top where it can be before your marker, before your flow marker, then you're going to go ahead and reset it to the bottom, advance your flow marker, get an additional benefit, and that's important because as these advance to the very top over here, you'll eventually have the opportunity of actually placing them down over here, where they're going to be worth points for you, which you're trying to get to effectively 6 points, so a single point is worth all that legwork of moving up the track and then placing it down onto this board that you're going to be exploring over here. That's going to be the main idea of the worker placement spots on the board. Past that, each worker placement spot will give you different things as well as that. One of them is going to give you buildings. You're going to have this display of buildings over here, which go to the side of your tableau, and they give you a way to activate your familiar on these building rows, activating either a bottom benefit or a top benefit on these different building rows. So you're going to want to try to be mindful of getting buildings. Buildings are good. You're also going to want adventurers and items. You're going to have items you can get to one of the spots over here, and these are items you can also go ahead, you can get them, which will give you a benefit, but you can also upgrade them, which will give you another benefit during combat, where you can use your dice over here. So you're going to want to get items because items, like buildings, are good. You're also going to want to go ahead and deal with adventurers and companions in the bar over here. So you're going to have these. Let me move these a little bit more on camera. This game takes quite a bit of table space over here. But you're going to have these items, these adventurers. All of these will also give you different benefits over here. You're going to try to go ahead and get these cards, choosing one of the benefits on them, or getting these cards where you'll go ahead and take your feather marker, putting it on the marker, getting an endgame scroll card with various endgame scoring, and being able to move these along as you hit certain conditions. And so you're trying to get those allies as well. So basically, you have 5 spots in the village. Again, you have a healing spot, you have a kind of a trade-in spot for crystals, but then you have 4 other spots, and those 4 spots give you either buildings, items, adventurers, or companions or whatnot. Those 4 different things being added, while also making sure you are moving these up their tracks to eventually be able to go ahead and unlock these to get points by planting them on the board over there, and getting these various symbols which will be useful to be able to unlock and explore different areas of the board. So that's one part of a lot of parts of the puzzle going on here. And I say a lot of parts because we talked about things you do when you're in the village, but how do you actually get those resources? How do you actually get to the point where you have a full track that you can then go ahead and unlock to the next level and slowly work your way towards those very few precious points? And the answer is you're playing an entire adventuring exploring game on all of this board over here. Because while players have their own individual player board, and while you have the map up here, the village over here with a bunch of cards we haven't even talked about, a lot of the game is going to take place on these boards here. Because most of the time what you can go ahead and do is you can gather one of your people over here, and you could start off in the village and start, because the village is the same, basically this area over here is effectively this area over here, but you're going to go ahead and start off in the village and then start moving around the board, trading in warmth, which is a resource, to be able to move around the board and slowly get various benefits. You see, when you move your adventure around the map, you get to move your adventure and then take an action. Now you can move your adventure along these little shallow areas over here, paying a warmth to go ahead and do so. So you pay a warmth, you cross across the shallow, and you go ahead and take actions there. Or you can also go ahead and call a ship to that port and spend warmth to move that ship to adjacent deep sea areas as well, where you can go ahead and dock at ports on the board. So you can go ahead and either walk across the areas you can walk across, or use the ship to explore and jump around the board as well, while you attempt to explore and gather tokens on this board. And I say gather tokens because that's what you'll do at first, although there's a process of slowly going through a cycle of, well, getting everything in the game. At first, you're going to try to gather these tokens. You'll flip them over, you'll take the tokens, boom, I got a resource, I move up this track. You're going to have the ability to basically cash in these tokens, but also on each of your turns, you get to utilize your familiar as well. There's going to be these cute little familiars, and whether you're using them in the village or whether you're using them down over here to explore, you can use familiars for an extra action, putting them down in an adjacent shallows, and then taking the associated benefit on the board. So whether you're taking an action to explore, you'll use your familiar as well. If you're taking an action in the village, you can use your familiar to activate your tableau of buildings. Your familiars just help you do more stuff in the game. Past that, once you get to a point where you've unlocked a little bit more, you can start trying to unlock and explore these areas of the board, where depending on whatever benefit you have over here, if you have the correct symbols, you can go ahead and explore flipping these tiles, adding more things to the board. But also, before you even get to there is an area of the board we haven't really talked about, which is this little cave. When you get to this cave, you effectively get to go monster hunting. You wander down here, you enter and explore the cave, and suddenly you're playing a whole little mini game down here, where there's a bunch of monsters in these caverns over here, that as you take them out are slowly going to be refilled, and you're going to be rolling dice trying to attack these monsters over here, trying to figure out, look, there we go, that's a critical, plus a sword, that means my sword is going to deal 3 damage, which happens to be exactly what I need to take out the Floth, who does 3 damage. The problem is melee damage happens after they attack, whereas range damage happens before they attack, and that means they're going to go ahead and attack me for 2 damage first. I'll go ahead and take 2 damage, which is going to move my warmth trap down, and then over here, I'll be able to go ahead and take him out, killing him in this little dungeon adventure, as we slowly move past further onto the additional caverns over here, while trying to go through this monster hunting aspect of the game. So, a lot of things going on here, and I haven't even touched the smallest part of things. I've kind of talked about general aspects that you're doing over here. You're going to be exploring around the board over here. You're going to find new spots on the board. You're going to restore your warmth by campfires. You're going to go ahead and activate these tree cards over here, going to these camps over here and activating whatever tree bonus is on the board, flipping over those cards, revealing new things. This is, at its core, an adventure Eurogame. You're going to be wandering around, exploring, going and fighting the monsters, although you don't have to do so to win, but it's one of the many tools at your disposal to try to do so. You're going to be diving into the deepest dungeon over here and trying to gather additional benefits over here. There's potions, there's upgrades, there's items, there's cards, there's companions. There's all these additional tools at your disposal to help you out along the way, but ultimately you're trying to chase those points and half points. I haven't even talked about this yet, but there's a whole concept in the game of half points where you're going to go ahead and get, well, half points, where you're going to track it on your player board, sliding up a little marker, and when you get 2 half points, you get a full point. There's going to be treasures and keys. When you get a treasure and a key, you can go ahead and gather one of these boxes and open it, seeing what benefit you've gotten here. We have our frozen heart over here. We can go ahead and benefit from that as well. There's a lot of different things happening here, but you're trying to play through a combination of exploring the board and or engaging into the village, where you deal with a degree of worker placement / Mancala mechanisms to ultimately boost your resource tracks, get more things done, while you try to work your way towards those 6 victory points. That's the core idea. This is not a rules teach, to be very clear. There's a lot of different things happening here, and I don't think I can properly cover all of it without a whole lot longer and what we'd call an actual rules teach video. The rulebook for this one was not short, prototype rulebook, but like prototype rulebook and all that was like 63 pages, which is where we're going to start getting into some interesting feedback about the game, because I don't think, well, we're going to get some interesting feedback about the game. But let's start off with ease of play. I can't fully judge this as where the ease of play would be because of the fact that I'm diving into this midway through where you would be diving into this. The game is effectively designed for you to be ramping your way up through different aspects of the game, and I wasn't given that. I was given here's where the game is, here's what it is, and go ahead and learn and play this. So I'm torn because I want to give you as much feedback as possible because that's what the review is supposed to be, but also it's a prototype review and it's very specifically being given to me mid-phase of where it would eventually be, which means I'm going to tell you about my experience, but I'm going to caveat my experience as prototype. I did not find this to be the easiest game to pick up and learn. I thought it was just, it's not that it's hard, it's just that there's so much content going on, and it's not intuitive either. The parts don't, to me, meld together as well as I would like. It feels like there's a lot of things happening here, and things were put in, and made to work as opposed to working naturally. And I don't know if my experience would feel differently had I approached this as, well, the way it's effectively designed to be approached, where you're going to go step by step through the content in the game. So I just don't know. I've seen their chart of what you'd be exposed to one step at a time, and I don't think my experience would change that much. But again, I haven't actually experienced that, so it's a weird situation. But ease of play, I'm a little confused because to me, I thought Pika Games was supposed to be like a lighter offshoot of Fantasia Games, and I found this to be just as complicated as any other Fantasia games to learn, possibly more so. It's not that it's mentally complex to actually go through it all, there's just a lot of things happening in this game, and there's a lot of rules, a lot of interactions, this whole flows around the familiars. I did not feel this was the easiest game to pick up and learn, and my impression was that it's supposed to be a little lighter than the typical Fantasia Games game. Again, Pika Games being an offshoot company. So that's kind of where I am on ease of play. A weird situation where my experience wasn't the best, but that might not be your experience. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, we're going to dive into a bunch of things I like, but there's a lot of things I'm mixed on this game. I'll tell you that right now. You can jump to final thoughts if you want to get the whole situation at the end of it, but there's a lot of things to get into. But let's start off with what I like. And there are things that I like in this game, because I'm going to start with that. There's going to be a bunch of things I don't like, but there are things that I like too. There are a bunch of fun stuff to unlock. That's the biggest thing that I like. This game gives you so many different aspects of things to explore, and they're all fun. They all let you do more stuff. And so to that end, I like that aspect of the game. I like getting new buildings. I like getting new items cards. I like getting new any cards. All of these are fun. These companion cards are a tricky little puzzle to go ahead and get not just a point scoring, but then figure out how to efficiently work your way through them. You can only have one of them at a time, so trying to figure out whether you can unlock all their abilities or possibly give up part of the way through, that's fun. You're going to have these additional tree spots in the village, which I already showed you one. I don't want to spoil things for you too much, but those are going to give you new things to unlock. You have monsters to fight. You have these little secret, cards to go through, which again, I haven't showed you. Something else that'll unlock in the cave when you hit this zone over here. You're going to have a whole bunch of things, all these different types of adventures you can go on in the game, where you can go on all these little cards and deal with these cards and get these one-time benefits and ongoing benefits when you have these encounters. The game is chock full of stuff to discover. Oh, we haven't even talked about this. There's the individual item spells you're going to have for your companions. Your companions that you're playing as, the characters you're playing as, they have these item spells that you can level up throughout the course of the game. You can level these up, going from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, jumping around over here, getting more items, and eventually potentially gathering more items, because each character has different skills they can get their hands on, and you can unlock and work your way through them and get more skills to add to your character. So the game just gives you an absolute ton of stuff to find, to unlock, to discover, to explore, and this game is meant to be explorable. The game is meant to be giving you more content to access as you go through it. So if you like finding and discovering new things, this game has it a ton of it, more than you could possibly imagine going through. There's a lot of stuff to discover and have fun with and build out your tableau and augment and all of that. The production value. As a prototype, the production value, the miniatures, the art, all that stuff looks amazing already. And the final game, again, knowing Fantasia, knowing Pika Games, I imagine will be even better with more deluxifications on some of the things here that are, standees or whatnot. I imagine will be even further deluxified to the nth degree on this game. The sense of exploration is present. You are exploring. The game at first you kind of walk into this thinking that the main game is going to be up there in the village and a lot of worker placement kind of going on, but that's really not. That's kind of the culmination of, hey, you've done all these things, now go home, cash in, then go back out wandering again. And so that sense of exploration is very present as you wander around the board, try to find new things, unlock new stuff, figure out the map layouts and setup, get senses or hints of what's to come on the board. There's lots of ways to approach getting your points in the game. Again, I get a huge part of the game is this monster hunting aspect, but you don't ever have to engage with that. That's just one of the many tools the game gives you as far as the ways to explore the game, the ways to go ahead and try to find out how to get things done. And so it gives you a lot of things to unlock, it gives you a sense of exploration, it gives you beautiful production. There are a bunch of things to like about Floe. but there's also things I don't like about Floe. And I'll say that, first of all, the rules load versus the depth of play wasn't a ratio where I like it. I mentioned comparisons to Fantasia games and other games that they've had, and the tricky part there is that when I look at Fantasia games, other games, when I look at Unconscious Mind, when I look at Endless Winter, and I think of the rules load versus the mental complexity and the payoff of the play, those ratios work out for me. This one, Floe is an interesting position for me, where Floe has a lot of the same complexities, interactions, rules overhead, but I didn't find the actual what you're doing turn to turn to be as mentally rewarding. So it has the mental challenge without the mental reward. That's where, and it puts it in a weird place for me where I both like the things the game is doing, while also feeling it's not necessarily worth the amount of investment in setup. Setup alone, by the way, I didn't even cover this, but setup is a huge process for this game. It is not a small amount of setup of getting everything all ready to go and prepped in the million different piles and bags and all that stuff, but then getting this game prepped to play, teaching other players, and all of that stuff versus the actual complexity, that enjoyment that I got out of the experience of it, that ratio didn't pay off for me. Familiars as well. The familiars in the game, they felt too fiddly for me. I didn't feel the familiars really added a lot to the gameplay other than, again, another rules aspect to kind of memorize as far as how they operate. I'd rather just take actions with my character as opposed to being like, well, I take actions like this, but then the familiar does that. It just felt like an unnecessary fiddly thing into the game. It didn't feel smooth. It felt thrown in. It felt forced into me. It didn't feel smooth for me. Additionally, the Mancala mechanism. There's a little Mancala mechanism going on in the village, which I like Mancala mechanisms in the game. I like 5 tribes. I like Ostia. I like Trajan. I didn't like the Mancala mechanism here. It felt weird and out of place. Most of the time you're going to the village, you're just going to be augmenting whatever skill you need to augment because you're at the max capacity. It doesn't feel like there's a trade-off and a challenge of, ooh, I'll go here because there's more or less villagers there. You go where you need to go in the village, kind of unnecessarily disregarding the actual villager placement. So the Mancala mechanism, again, felt weird and out of place to me. The game in its current state doesn't feel balanced around player counts. You can have the same number of resources on this board regardless of what player count you're playing as, and that means that you do start to feel resource starved at larger player counts versus not so much at lower player counts. The whole half point concept, again, felt a little weird and out of place to me. There's these half points where, and I recognize that as somebody who grades on a 0.5 scale and frequently has people ask me, why don't I just do a 10-point scale and ignore the 0.5s? I get that this is an ironic complaint, but to me, I didn't understand why are there half points. Why not just give the things that are 1 point 2 points and give the things that are half a point 1 point? Instead, they have this fiddly aspect on the player board where you save your half point and then get it later. Why not just convert the ratio? And again, I recognize my rating scale and all that. So there's just a lot of things going on in this game that, to me, made the whole experience feel a little bit more fiddly. And while there are fun things to get to, I don't know if I felt it was worth it, if that makes sense. So a lot of things that kind of get in the way of where it was. And again, prototype. I should give that disclaimer again and again. But yeah, a lot of things that didn't work for me as much. As far as things I can see others not liking, first of all, the structure of how to play, I definitely didn't find intuitive. That might be a problem for you. Like I said already in this review, you kind of feel like a lot of the game's going to be up here in the village, and that means that your first turns, diving into this one, your first turns, you might feel a bit lost as far as what you actually do in the game. That's kind of a payoff where you cash in on the stuff you've done, but it's diving into this game at the very beginning, even after you have all the rules, it can be a bit of a disconnect between getting the rules and then understanding how to turn that rules into actually winning the game. There's definitely that disconnect. There's also going to be randomness in dice fights, like this dice roll over here, that dice roll over here, the sword and the crit. That's a great die roll for the early on before you can upgrade the amount of dice you roll, because you, again, tableau building, you get to upgrade various things, including how many dice you roll in combat. But this is a great roll. But, you know, you could have this, which is less of a great roll, or these two over here, which might not be enough to kill whoever you're fighting against. And there are ways, if you're familiar, to jump in and potentially add to it, but again, the dice rolls can definitely be inconsistent in the monster fights, which might be frustrating when somebody else goes ahead and easily kills things, and you can't. That can be a frustrating experience. As far as final thoughts on Floe, I wanted to like this one. I wanted to like this one so much. And again, there are fun things to get to. I want to be very clear. There are fun things in this game to get to, but I really, that expression, like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, I really felt that way about Floe. I have generally loved the games Fantasia Games has put out, and Floe is in a weird space for me where it doesn't feel, it feels the rules overhead is equivalent to any Fantasia Games title, but the actual game behind it didn't feel as rewarding as a typical Fantasia Games title. And so for me, I'm kind of more mixed on this one, unfortunately. I wanted to like it, but it's not where The experience I got out of it is not the experience I was hoping I'd get out of it. For me, this is a 3 out of 5, which is not bad. There's still fun things to enjoy here, but especially coming from Henry Audubon, from again, Henry Audubon, Johnny Pack, Yoma, Fantasia Games crew, it's a game I was expecting a lot more out of. And I don't often reference other reviews in my reviews, but I do want to go ahead and encourage you to check out Thinker Themer's coverage of the game, because Thinker Themer covered this game as well, and the disparity between their experience and my experience is so far apart that I feel it's worth directing you to somebody else who did have an excellent time with this game. And it's worth noting they're not shy about saying when a game was not for them, and spoilers of their review, but Floe was very much for them. For me, I think there's a lot of fun things behind this game, but there's a lot of things that get in the way as well. So for me, is unfortunately a bit more of a miss. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I highly recommend checking out The Witcher. It's a weird comparison, I know, but it does kind of actually hit the same notes, where a lot of things in The Witcher are about elevating your personal tracks, getting them stronger, being able to explore the world around you, engaging in monster fights, but not necessarily doing that all the time. There's a variety of ways to get points. There's a lot of elements. Despite the vast differences in the games, they do feel a little similar in the experience I actually got out of them versus The Witcher versus Floe. And if you're looking for another adventure game that's going to be kind of more similar vibes, while actually a little bit different in the gameplay, checking out something like Above and Below from Red Raven Games. Above and Below would be giving you a similar kind of Yuri adventure experience that you might be getting out of something like Floe. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.